We've got a special guest this morning. He's going to bring the word to us. So, Rev Dr Tokerau Joseph and his good lady here, Tangi, came all the way down from North Shore. Yeah, so they are ministering at Marangi Castor Bay, a Presbyterian church up there. We actually went through Knox together, Sandra and I, and Tokerau and Tangi and all their family as well. So we go all the way back there. And so it's so good. Welcome to St. James, brother and sister in Christ. It's good to have you this morning. Tokerau is doing a round in the presbytery here in Northern Presbytery, just to promote, if you sense a call of God on your life to go to Knox, that's why he's here. So just promotion of the ministry. But without further ado, I'm going to invite Tokerau to come and share with us. So come on, brother.
It's good to see you all this morning. Before I begin, I think I'd like to bring our readings this morning. And then I'd like to show you a brief video. So, the first reading that I have for us is from from 1 Samuel, chapter 3. And you may be familiar with this story about young Samuel. And his experience of God's calling in his life. From 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 1 to 10. In those days when the boy Samuel was serving the Lord under the direction of Eli, there were very few messages from the Lord, and visions from him were quite rare. One night, Eli, who was now almost blind, was sleeping in his own room. Samuel was sleeping in the sanctuary, where the sacred covenant box was. And before dawn, while the lamp was still burning, the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, "Yes, sir," and ran to Eli and said, "You called me, and here I am." But Eli answered, "I didn't call you. Go back to bed." So Samuel went back to bed. The Lord called Samuel again. The boy did not know that it was the Lord, because the Lord had never spoken to him before. So he got up and went to Eli and said, "You called me. Here I am." But Eli answered, "My son, I didn't call you. Go back to bed." The Lord called Samuel a third time. He got up, went to Eli and said, "You called me, and here I am." And then Eli realized that it was the Lord who was calling the boy. And so he said to him, "Go back to bed, and if he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went back to bed, and the Lord came and stood there and called as he had before, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel answered, "Speak, your servant is listening." And then from the New Testament, the Gospel according to Mark. Mark chapter 1, beginning at verse 16, as Jesus begins to call his first followers. As Jesus walked along the shore of Galilee, he saw two fishermen, Simon and his brother Andrew. They are catching fish with a net. And Jesus said to them, "Come with me, and I will teach you to catch people." At once they left their nets and went with him. He went a little farther on and saw two other brothers, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. They were in their boat getting the nets ready. As soon as Jesus saw them, he called them. they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and went with Jesus. And so may the Lord bless to us the reading and the hearing of these words. And I'd like you to keep these readings in mind. And I'm going to ask if our video can be played now. Thank you. You might recognize someone in this video.
God engages with people and has been doing so for a very long time.
Tēnā koutou. God connects with all kinds of people
from different walks of life.
People like us.
And me, and like you too.
God, the Atua, calls us. We can experience that calling directly.
Sometimes it's recognized by others.
It might also develop over some time.
But it's real enough to make us pay attention.
And we can understand it too.
We are all called to Christian discipleship and service.
In our local congregations and in the wider church. Some are called to serve in particular roles.
As a minister in national ordained ministry.
Perhaps as part of a shared ministry team.
Or in local ordained ministry.
Including Amorangi ministry.
Among tangata whenua.
As well as new missional initiatives.
So, have you been sensing God's calling to ministry in the church?
You may have gifts and skills to offer.
Or be willing to do some study and training.
So you might like to spend some time talking and praying with someone.
With your minister.
With an elder or church leader.
Maybe with a trusted Christian friend.
Or with your presbytery candidate convener.
To help you realize your calling. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. I hope you enjoyed that short video that we put together. It was launched at our last General Assembly. Someone said to me, you know, Tokerau, if ministry doesn't always work out, you could always try auditioning for Shortland Street. And I went, I don't know about that. We also show this video to honour someone who agreed to be a part of it. And her name was Emily Wotton, who was from St. Helier's Presbyterian Church. Unfortunately, she passed away last year. And so having completed this video, we dearly miss her, and we're grateful for her contribution to making this video possible. So it's an honor to be here, and I really would like to express my thanks to Clever. Thank you, brother, for the opportunity to come and to share with you this morning in worship, and to share some of the challenges and the hopes that we have as a presbytery, as well as the national church, PCANZ, and perhaps for you here as a congregation of St. James in Pukekohe. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about my role as a minister enabler of Northern Presbytery. You know, by way of a brief background, our church, the PCANZ, has been experiencing some unsettling concerns about the declining membership, churches being closed down, including the very small number of ministers that are coming through. And regarding the last part about ministers, while the retirement of ministers is understandable and it's expected, but more of a concern for us is the lack of new ministers that are coming through. And these concerns were highlighted in all kinds of reports. I'm not sure if you remember the TELT report, T-E-L-T. That was Theological Education and Leadership Training. That was a report. It was a big report that was discussed at a couple of General Assemblies ago. And then Northern Presbytery had its own report in 2019 about a case for change, acknowledging all of these challenges that we're facing in our church, but especially within our presbytery. And then in 2022, I did a report for Northern Presbytery called Missed Calls, trying to understand why. Why is there such a low number of people, or fewer people, that are considering this pathway in life towards ministry? And so, as one of the responses to this concern, Northern Presbytery established this position that I'm holding now, the minister enabler position. And so, as well as trying to raise the profile of ministry, my other main task is to try and find ways of encouraging and assisting people towards ministry within our national church. It involves working with people like our candidate conveners of the presbytery, as well as other bodies such as KCML or the Knox Centre for Ministry and Leadership. As Kaleva said, this is where we trained together as students. But it also involves working with people like those who are on the National Assessment Work Group. And really part of my role also is to try and find ways to remove, or at least to minimize, some of the barriers that people are facing as they consider a pathway to ministry. And as I've said earlier, the pathway to ministry is less traveled now than in years gone by. I remember in our time with Clever and Sandra, Knox was full of students. We had first year, second year, and third year when we joined. But today there are fewer and fewer people that are heeding the call or response to ordained ministry. And there are various reasons why fewer people are considering this direction. And so in my missed calls report that I did for Northern Presbytery, one of the significant factors identified for why fewer people are considering ministry, really one primary thing was about the lack of clarity about their sense of call to ministry. Some may have a feeling or kind of a conviction, a strong feeling about ministry, but they struggle to clearly discern or to make sense of that experience and then figure out, well, what's the best way to respond? So in short, many of them also lacked the appropriate support to help them clearly understand, what is this experience of mine? Is God really calling me? Another factor was that church leaders, including ministers, were quite uncertain about some of the relevant information and processes to assist people in their congregations about the different ministry strands that we have within the church. And then there was a low priority given to raising the profile of ministry and then proactively, identifying potential people, potential candidates. You see, we all believe in Christian discipleship by assisting people in discerning how they may serve God within the local church, within a church like this. But the problem is that it rarely extends beyond the local church. And that's understandable because ministers do not want to lose their good people. Now, we had a candidacy for ministry handbook, and I want to apologize that I forgot to bring a box of those handbooks with me this morning. But one of the key sections in this handbook that I wrote or prepared for the Northern Presbytery, it explores the biblical and theological perspective of God's calling on people's lives and how they can then discern that calling. And within our church, we have 4 recognized strands of ministry, and they are the National Ordained Ministry, which is the NOM. Then we have local ordained ministry, the LOM. We have shared ministry teams, and then we have the Amorangi ministry, which is under the umbrella of our Māori presbytery, which is Te Aka Puaho. And so the book, the handbook that I prepared, acknowledges all these 4 strands, but there is quite a focus on the LOM and the NOM strands of ministry, because this is in the majority of people enter into these 2 types of ministry. It's not that the other two are not important. No, they are valid in their own right. And people, we want to encourage people or assist people if this is where their calling is leading them into shared ministry teams or with Te Aka Puaho. But it's helping people to discern, God, what is your calling for me and my service to you and to the church? And so with respect to these different ministries that we have, really it is that focus on helping people to understand their sense of call or God's calling upon their life and seeking to clarify some areas for them. In the book, we've also got testimonies or testimonials from those that have been through this process and have completed the journey and now are in ministry. And so, regarding this journey within our national church, our reading from 1 Samuel shows how important discerning God's call is upon one's life. The boy Samuel is already part of the religious setting under the mentorship of the old priest Eli. Despite that, Samuel's service to God is not yet affirmed until something happens, until he experiences something profound that would change the course of his life. And that was experiencing a calling by God upon his life. Samuel initially thinks that he is being summoned by Eli. And so he gets up and he goes to Eli. And three times this happens. And after the third time, it's Eli, the old priest. Eli is the one who then discerns that God is involved in this experience of Samuel. And so he instructs Samuel how to respond. He says, "Now the Lord came and stood there and called as before, 'Samuel, Samuel.' And Samuel said, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" You know, some people experience what they believe or sense to be a direct calling from God upon their life. And we see examples of this in Scripture like Moses and the burning bush, the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah. And the calling can be very clear and it can be very, very dramatic. The burning bush, this vision of God in the temple. And these direct experiences, they kind of are affirmed through signs and wonders, as in the case of Moses and the prophets. And then there are some like Samuel who encounter God in a way that is unclear at the beginning. And they experience something that they cannot really grasp with much certainty. And so they need some guidance. They need some wisdom and discernment from others to help them better understand what is going on in their experience. And then there are those who grow up in the faith community and in which their Christian faith and their service is shaped all the way. And like Samuel, perhaps they are mentored and their sense of call to service and ministry, it's informed and it's encouraged through instruction, through guidance and support as they develop over time within the faith community. There are those who start off in what used to be Sunday school, then they get into youth group, and then they get into young adults group, and then they progress through the life of the church, and they are being formed and shaped in such a way that they can then begin to serve in the church. So the point is that getting clarity to understand God's calling upon your life, it requires intentional and careful consideration. And we call this discernment. And it's not merely a solo effort, I think. It ought to involve other people, like Eli, ministers and church leaders, elders or deacons, or those in some kind of leadership position, or even a trusted Christian brother or sister, all of them can be a part of that process in helping someone to understand this experience of God in their life. And sometimes that affirmation can take time to happen. Yet often we get the idea that the response to a calling to ordained ministry is just something spontaneous. It's something automatic. And that's how Mark and the other gospel writers present the response of the first followers to Jesus. And for Mark, everything is immediate. If you read Mark's gospel, everything happens so quickly. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." And Mark says, "And immediately they left their nets and followed him." But I wonder if, like many today, whether the disciples too may have had some questions, some apprehension, and a desire to try and clarify things before responding. I know that was my case. Maybe Brother Clever had questions too when that sense of calling came upon his life. Is it possible that the disciples at least had some kind of hesitation or even some kind of doubt because they had families and jobs to take care of? And now they just get up and go? Maybe they too could have used some advice, some guidance, someone who could help them to discern or to perceive if God is involved or not in their experience. From a very young age, I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be a police officer after seeing my father in a uniform with his hat. And so that sort of impressed on me. I thought, that's what I want to do when I grow up as well. But it wasn't until later that I realized something important, and that the uniform he was wearing was not that of a police officer, but as a Boys Brigade officer. Anyone remember the Boys Brigade? Yeah, I can see some hands going up. He was an officer in the Boys Brigade. I grew up in the Pacific Islanders Church in Otara, and I progressed through the Sunday school, to the Boys Brigade, the youth, the choir, home group Bible studies, and so on. One of our ministers spoke with me about ministry, explaining that he kind of recognized something about ministry for me that I couldn't see for myself. But I think more truthfully, that I didn't want to see for myself. I had lots of questions and doubts because my wife and I, we both had jobs. We had a young family. We just bought a house. We had a mortgage to pay. But to cut a long story short, I resisted this sense of call, even though someone else recognized it for me. I resisted it and I ran from it for nearly 2 years. But the more I resisted and the more I ran, the more I sensed God's calling running after me. After much wrestling and much counsel and prayer with my wife and others, I finally surrendered and stopped running. And 30 years later, here I am in a different kind of uniform. Not the one that I initially wanted. Or perhaps you too have been wrestling with an experience of God's calling in your life. Maybe there's someone here. Maybe you've experienced a direct sense of call from God, or perhaps through someone else. Maybe it's developed over time as you've grown up in the faith community. And that experience may be a little bit vague to you, and it's challenging for you to articulate or to explain. But I wonder how many of you have got one of these. I heard one. I heard one in the church. You can see on that picture. What would you usually do with this? You can text, you can make calls, you can answer calls. What else? You can throw it away. You can throw it away. Anything, take pictures, research, remind you of meetings. It's got calendar, yep. You can read a Bible on your phone. There's a torch. GPS, yeah, I had to use the GPS to get here. So there's lots of things that you can do with this. And although this is very, very helpful for us, and it really can, have the capacity to shape our life, but God doesn't need this to communicate with you. God can use this, sure. But I want to encourage you that if there is a sense of call in your life, that somehow God is wanting to connect with you, and God is wanting to give you some information, to give you some guidance and provide a map for your life, that God is wanting to shine a light in your life for you to follow a pathway. And if God is also wanting to remind you, there's a calendar, that there's an appointment for you, that there's something that's ahead for you, then maybe it is time to consider would you pick up? Would you pick up if God is calling? Will you respond? Will you answer? And allow God to shine the torch and to show you the way for your life. I want to encourage you not to ignore or to dismiss it as something silly or irrelevant for you. Instead, I encourage you to explore that experience of God more in your life. Talk and pray with someone. Come and talk to your minister here and with Sandra. Perhaps with an elder or some other leader in the life of the church here, a Christian friend. And I'm more than happy to speak with anyone after this service. And for the church leaders as well, I want to encourage you all about raising the profile of ministry in this congregation, in this community. Can I encourage you to make yourself available to get alongside people who may have questions or who may express an interest for how they might take their discipleship to another level, even if beyond the local church. So in closing, I'd like to leave you with the first and last verses of a hymn by John Bell. And I offer it to you as an encouragement as well as a challenge to what God might be doing in your life, to how God might be calling you to His service. And maybe you've sung this song, this hymn. Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in you and you in me? Lord, your summons echoes true when you but call my name. Let me turn and follow you and never be the same. In your company I'll go where your love and footsteps show. Thus I'll move and live and grow in you and you in me. Amen. Thank you.